Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conscious Conversion, a weekly podcast about bridging the gap between business and spirit, money and meaning, technology and regeneration in a wildly changing world. In a time of so much polarity and uncertainty, this podcast explores how together we are connecting across the planet, across our differences, and across dimensions as we build the new earth together. And again, I am Sarah Yemtich, your host. Thank you so much for being here. I'm genuinely, absolutely excited from the depths of my being to have this conversation today with Nadine Lee. She is the founder of Tantric Alchemy, which was birthed from her own passion to raise the consciousness of the planet. She is here to help you awaken the divine feminine in union with the divine masculine and return home to self. She is the teacher of the feminine tantric arts and feminine embodiment coach. Tantric Alchemy is a school of awakening that offers online courses, in-person trainings, and mentorships. At the core of her work, she is here to expand your mind, your body, and your soul, and she will help you break down conditionings and stories that bind you and hold you back from living your truest potential. And I just went down a wildly delightful rabbit hole of your Instagram, Nadine. So I'm really excited to talk with you today. Thank you for being here. Amazing. So first, my first question is, who are you in this incarnation and what is your purpose now?
Who am I in this incarnation? I'm a woman. And I mean, I don't even know really how to answer that question because it's so multidimensional, but I feel my purpose in this incarnation is really to bridge the gap between spirituality and sexuality. And from my own experience, direct experience, from such a young age, having access and also like this thirst and hunger to like know more and understand what this energy was from the age of 6. And then at the age of 14, having a full-on Kundalini awakening and then learning how to manage that energy over the past 20 years, really, like how to ground that energy, spiritual energy with the sexual energy. I feel just my life journey has kind of thrust me into this path because I didn't actually want to be doing what I'm doing right now. Like in my mind, like, and my ego, I wanted to just, work the corporate job. And then I broke out of the corporate world and started to study nutrition. And I was like, I just want to be a nutritionist, that's like, just want to, and then I kept getting like invited to be this like in-house nutritionist and cater all these tantra retreats and sexuality retreats. And I was just like really resistant to that and wanted to just stay in the nutrition side of things. And life just kept kind of like pulling me into this path. And when I just surrendered, it was just so much ease and grace and everything kind of just made sense. So I'm here to bridge that gap between the two, sex and spirit, and really to help people remember the sacredness of our sexuality and that erotic innocence of our sexuality, and that it is a gateway to our spirituality and to the divine. They're not fragmented. And, I see it as just the tantric path, merging sex and spirit, merging the polarities of masculine and feminine within ourselves, and then all the elements within ourselves and coming into that union. So, that's a little bit about, I feel, what I'm here to do. And tantric.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, that was a beautiful, beautiful answer. So I think you did great. I know it's like a bombshell of a first question, but I feel like it just sort of opens things up really quickly. Yeah. I like to go big or go home when it comes to like the depth of the conversation. So thank you for going there with me. And I feel like this is for me personally, this is a big part of my path, and I'm still on it. I'm still lovingly grappling with it. And you know, like I said, as I was introducing you, I went down the rabbit hole of your Instagram, and you've got some really beautifully eloquent and visually stunning and activating posts on there. Definitely highly recommend checking out Nadine's Instagram, y'all. Yeah, there were so many little pieces that I pulled out that I wanted to talk about. And one of them you just mentioned, which was that you had a Kundalini activation when you were 14, which from what I understand, was interpreted maybe as a possible mental health challenge at first. I think that happens a lot for people who awaken. And I've personally experienced it, not in my own body, but in loved ones who have sort of tapped into something that their earthly being either wasn't prepared to handle, or the world around them wasn't prepared to handle, or both.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you can speak to that experience at all. And yeah.
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite things to talk about. And I actually am planning to, in the next couple of years, create a documentary on this exact topic, like the bridge between mystic and madness, you know, and like that fine line, that razor's edge, because of my own experience and the misconceptions around mysticism and mental health, you know. So for me, what happened was I just had a rush of energy through my body, and it wasn't stimulated by any drugs or alcohol or psychedelics, nothing. It was, or even any practice. I was literally just at my friend's house, and I had this rush of energy through my body. And then I went into this, it felt, what I can relate it to now is when you just start to, like when you smoke weed and you start to like go, you know, you like leave the body, and there's like intense kind of paranoia sometimes, or like anxiety comes up. That started to happen. And then I'd had it happen before, like once or twice, but it wasn't like a prolonged thing. It was just like, it felt like an anxiety attack or something. But this was like, it lasted for 3 days, and I was, it felt like I was stoned for 3 days, and I had no thoughts in my head. It was just blank. And the only thing I really remember was having intense fear when I was going to sleep, because I thought I was going to die in my sleep. And what I see it as now is like, it was just like my ego dying, and like a part of my old self was dying, you know. But I was like genuinely scared I was going to die. Like my physical body was going to die. So that was like an intense 3 days. And then I kind of came back into reality, and like I was, you know, having structured thoughts again, and like, you know, could remember my name and who I was, my identity. But it was like I'd had such a radical shift in consciousness that nothing made sense really anymore. And I was like questioning everything, like questioning, who am I? Like, what is the purpose of this? Like, what is real? You know, like I was going into full on like paranoia kind of type scenarios. Like, what if I'm like, I remember one was like, I thought I was dead, and everyone was like, couldn't see me, you know, like I was going into all these weird, like distorted perceptions of reality. And it was because of this like intense activation in my third eye, basically what I see now from studying, you know, so much Tantra and yoga, that like that third eye just blasted open. And then it was like, there was a fragment in this physical body and that spiritual experience. And a lot of people experience this after, you know, like they have a trip, like a psychedelic trip, or they do an ayahuasca ceremony. It's hard to integrate it back. But for me, it was like, I didn't have tools. I didn't have any real, framework for what was going on. So from that point on, for the next, like, you know, 4 or 5 years, I experienced a lot of depression and anxiety and paranoia. And the only way I could really cope was like channeling my energy into because it was like this third eye was blasted open. I had to like focus my energy. So I started to just really, wow, can you hear this? Okay. There's just some like.
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, like I just started to channel my energy into into my schoolwork and just into intellectual concepts, and like I was like just going crazy with my schoolwork. So it kind of benefited me because I graduated with really good grades, but I had to like just focus my mind. And that was what kind of kept me through, kept me sane, you could say. Like no one knew what was going on inside of me, but like I felt like very out of body and detached. And that was like my coping mechanism. And then when I was like about 19, 20, I found yoga and Tantra. Well, no, it was yoga and meditation to start, which are roots of Tantra anyway. But like that's what kind of like clicked it all together. And I felt like back in my body and could feel like, just made sense of what actually happened. And then I just kind of kept going down that path, and it felt good doing all this yoga and meditating, and I felt finally back in my body and grounded. And so, from there, that's just been my path and my journey of like integrating back into the body, working with this energy, and really understanding that when people do have these like awakenings, often the Western medical system will call it a psychotic episode or like a psychotic break, and people start hearing voices or whatever. Like often that is basically people, their third eye is so open, their perception gets blasted open. Often they're attuning to different dimensions, but the Western medical system has no idea about this more shamanic side of things, and more esoteric side of things. So they just label it as mental illness, give you drugs to suppress that life force energy. And what I really think is happening is there's a deeper agenda to keep people suppressed from accessing that energy, because these drugs suppress it so deeply, so you can't access your full power, because in the Eastern cultures and shamanic cultures, you'd be taken, like I would have been taken to an ashram or a tribe and worked with a shaman. And this has been a common thing I've heard from a lot of people who've had similar experiences, from India or from, South America. Like they were taken to work to become the village shaman or like the priestess or whatever, because you have access to these other dimensions. So there's just such a misconception in those two, mystical realm and in like madness. And Western psychiatry is so far behind. And I do also feel there's the agenda of the pharmaceuticals to keep us suppressed. So.
Yeah. Oh, that brought up so much, that so many different tangents that I could go down with you and spend hours talking. One of the purposes of this podcast is to really visualize together about the new paradigm and the new earth that we're co-creating together, to give us a platform to talk about it and to brainstorm and to bring it to life as much as possible. So as you were talking about sort of the ways that, in shamanic cultures, we would have handled those things. And I agree completely. I've been saying the same thing for years after an experience with this with a very intimate person in my life, that he is actually a shaman and should have been treated as such. And it's heartbreaking. And I wonder, sort of, in this new world that we're creating, the old one is collapsing. Whatever agendas there are, let's just say that it's collapsing, because that's the only way we can cope and move through it, right? So how would you imagine this being handled in this new paradigm, and how do you see Tantra helping to solve that?
Yeah, so I think it really starts with parents being informed of, these things, this bridge between the two worlds. Because, often if their child has, or their teenager has something like this happen, the automatic response is, if they're plugged into that old system, take them to the doctors or psychiatrist. So parents need to be informed of mindfulness and just basics of meditation, basics of like how to work with your energy, how to ground your energy if something like this does happen. grounding practices, how to be in your body, and tools that help like children and teenagers, like how to process emotions and not avoid them with all these distractions that are going on. Like seeing kids that are 5 years old having iPhones now, it's like just taking them out of their bodies completely and disassociating. So learning how to ground our energy and work with our emotions from the parent's perspective. And and then if something does happen like this, it's like having a space to take them, so access to, like the local shaman or like healers that can guide that person who have actually been through that journey. Because often the parent, maybe they've never experienced something like that. So they're not the guide for that child. Like they have to let go of the control and like let someone else guide them, in that way to manage those energies and really nurture them, because that's a big thing. A lot of healers now our age are like, we had these gifts when we were younger, but like they just were like suppressed out of us or like pushed out of us. Whereas if they were nurtured, like our sensitivities and these extra sensory abilities, like we probably wouldn't have wasted so much time and would have, been doing this work at a younger age. And, there's no right or wrong, like we had our path, but if you can really like harness that in a child or a teenager, it would really, support them to move forward. And I think it really comes down to also not being so rigid in this, like, going to school system, because that if someone is really highly creative and highly like psychic and all this, like they're not going to want to sit in a school and be regimented every day. Like they might need to go and like, just study whatever their passion is, like from the age of 12 and just start on that journey. And I think that really comes to us as like the parents to be setting up the foundations where we can have flexibility, where our kids can like, do their own path, not have to go to school out of like obligation. So I feel like our generation is like setting up the frameworks for these new kids that are coming through, really, because they're so powerful. Even I have a lot of clients who are in their early 20s, like 21, 22, and they're just next level. They just know their mission. They're like, they know what they're here to do. And the ones that are even younger, it's like, you have a child, you said, like you can probably see that.
Yeah.
Like, just, it's just next level. So we need to set up these spaces and containers, like, and lifestyles that can support their full creative blossoming. And because they're the ones that are going to lead this thing.
Exactly. No, I mean, I see one of my purposes in life is to raise my child in a way that he could blossom into his shamanic powers if he has them, and to be a leader in this new world that we're creating. No pressure on him, but at least to create the environment where that would be so welcome, and that would flow, So I totally agree with you. And it's partly why I moved out of the States and moved to Costa Rica, is it felt like a place where it would be easier for me to raise him in a way that was like in harmony with nature and sort of out of that sort of mainstream. If there are agendas, it's kind of like just sheltering us from that a bit in the jungle.
Yeah.
How do you, it's kind of shifting gears a little bit, but so much of what you talk about is something I'm very passionate about what you just spoke about around what they call mental health and shamanism, and how we could raise our kids in the new paradigm. But the other thing that you speak to, or one of the other things that you speak to so beautifully, is the divine feminine and polarity in relationship, and sex priestessship and tantra. And there were a few little pieces that I picked up from your Instagram. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about that, about the role of Tantra, how we define Tantra, and how that relates to this priestessship.
Yeah. So Tantra really for me is so, I went to an ashram and spent like a lot of time there, maybe 6 months. I was living in an ashram, and still at the end of that, it was a tantric ashram in India. And even at the end of that 6 months, there was no definition given of Tantra. We're like, so what is Tantra? And that's part of it actually. And a big thing they really taught us was, or emphasized, was that, Tantra is you just living your bliss and really like walking your own path. So your definition of Tantra is your own definition. There's no like, here's what it is in one sentence. Now you know what Tantra is. It's like an embodied experience of you really feeling integrated and embodied in both those sex and spirit, in your full power, like full chakras awakened, every part of you is awakened. So it's really about finding that, what it means for you. And for me, I feel it really is about connection, so it's like connecting to the divine, having a connection to source, to spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, something greater than ourselves, like really having a deep relationship with that and having practices that, connect you into that, remind you of that divinity. And then from that place, it's like, how do I connect to myself? And then from that place, it's like, how do I connect to others? And especially in partnership, like that's the first, usually deep, like most intimate way we connect with another. So often what, is being taught in Tantra is just the connection with others. And it's not really taking into consideration that you can't really connect with another unless you've connected with yourself and the vertical plane first. So a lot of people don't realize like Tantra is actually really rooted in meditation. So when people are like, I want to learn Tantra, I'm like, okay, yeah, like go and meditate, go to a Vipassana retreat, go sit in silence and sit with yourself for 10 days. Like that is what I feel Tantra is rooted in, is that meditation and being so intimate with the silence and the stillness within. And from that place, we can be able to engage with others, and we can really engage in that tantric way sexually, because there's more of a connection to ourselves and to that attunement to what we like and attuning to someone else's energy field. Whereas if we're just going straight to someone else and it's just masking over, like it's like the Band-Aid. It's like, no, like you need to, I've been to some Tantra things back in the day, and it's like a group of people and you just meant to sit with someone that you've just met and soul gaze, look into their eyes and get into like Yabyum, which is the most intimate way to connect, like aligning all your chakras. And often it's re-traumatizing for people because they don't feel safe with someone that they've just literally just met, and then they'll like have to sit with their genitals touching and like looking into each other's eyes, like, it's like, it's not really the way to go about it. It's like, let's meditate first, let's get to know ourselves and then connect with another. So I'm really about the inner Tantra first, and then we can extend to another. Yeah, it's really about connection.
I love that. Thank you so much. I remember because, obviously I've known about Tantra for several years as somebody who's been a practicing yogi for, since my 20s or late teens. And I was always so sort of creeped out by the concept of the Tantra gatherings because I'm like, I don't know these people. I don't know who they are. I love the idea of it. I love the idea of learning how to deeply connect and learning how to sort of like really harness my own energy and be in my body and the sensuality of that. But I certainly don't want to do that with any damn stranger. So I love how you frame that about the Tantra to the self being so important, and then creating. I mean, the same thing is true, I think, for the relationship between the feminine and the masculine. instead of looking outside of oneself to find that masculine as a woman, to look within to find that. In fact, this morning, it's 2/22/22 on the time of this recording, and I did a self-marriage ceremony last night and this morning. And I wrote vows to myself. And as I was trying to think of how to write those vows, I thought, what is it that I just always have longed for a man to say to me? What are those vows that I wish that would come from the masculine, from an external source? And how can I really say that to myself and remind myself every day that that's what I'm here for? I'm here for myself, and I'm devoted to myself. And it sounds like that's sort of what there's the devotion to source and the devotion to self. And that's the first doorway into Tantra.
Yeah, for sure. Just hang on one second. I'm going to close this window.
Okay.
Sorry. There's just like I don't know, they never do this. There's like whippersnippers going on outside.
We're used to background noise here. There's usually howler monkeys and macaws and construction sounds. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's really about that, like connecting. And that's a big thing, is that, I love that you did that today, the inner marriage ceremony. It really is about, like that polarity and the union of those polar opposites within first. I said like sex and spirit, but there's also the two polarities, masculine and feminine. So another thing, like we're always looking outside, like, oh, I want my man to complete me, or I want my woman to complete me. And it's like, if you're having that attitude or that like mindset, then you're always going to end up in codependent relationships, whereas if you come as a whole being, like I have my inner marriage, like I've got myself, my inner man has got me as a woman, and then it's like you can actually just enjoy the man, not I need you to like be everything for me because my inner man has no backbone or like no boundaries or no structure or discipline, So it's like, and same for a man, if he has a connection to his inner feminine, he's going to be a more wholesome man, and not look to you to provide everything that's feminine for him, because that's more codependency. Whereas this new paradigm relationship is, yes, as a woman, we have more feminine qualities just by being a woman, who were born into a female body. So we have more feminine energy than masculine often. That's just, biologically is a fact. And then men have more, testosterone, the masculine energy, the hormones, but they still have the feminine. But it's like the yin yang, so we have both, but women, we have more of the feminine and then a dot of the masculine, and then the men, it's the other way around, So then we can come together as a whole to make that yin yang. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And you talk also about different kinds of relationships and how you've played with celibacy. You had 13 months of celibacy. And before that, I think, if I remember correctly, you had like your wild 20s where you were playing with all different kinds of relationship structures. And then you had your 13 months of celibacy. And now you're sort of revisiting what you called conscious loverships.
Yeah.
And as we're thinking about like new paradigm relationships and Tantra and the masculine and feminine, and like, there's so much, where in Puerto Viejo, where I've been living for the last several years, there's a lot of polyamory and non-monogamy. And again, sort of like the tantric workshops, I've been a little bit like, meh, I don't know about all this. Like, I just, is this just a mask for sex addiction, or is this a real thing? and how to know when it's one or the other? How can I discern, or how can we discern what is a conscious lovership situation versus me trying to get my needs met externally? I'm curious how you have sussed that out for yourself.
Yeah, I was explaining this actually recently too. someone I met. Though, you know, when I was in my 20s, I feel like there was like this exploration of my sexuality and having different lovers and not really committing. I didn't want a relationship, and that was my authentic truth. Like from the age of 23 till 27, I was like, I just don't want to be committed to anyone. I just want to have lovers, and that was my truth, and I just fully honored that. But there was an element of exploring that from a place of I feel lack of self-love and self-worth. So I'd like let men in maybe too quickly, or I didn't really like have much discernment, or there was still some like unconscious father wounding stuff going, like, you know, wanting them to validate me through that experience. Whereas now I'm having this experience where it's like completely the opposite to that. It's like choosing lovers from not a place of like wanting a relationship from them or like trying to like get anything unconsciously. It's more about just like sharing energy, and I feel really safe with a lot of, I mean, it hasn't been lots of people, but like maybe 3 in the past year, lovers. And it's been really powerful because I've had a deep friendship bond first and then gone into lovers, and I felt safe in that. So I'm like exploring, you know, how that works, like, and having conscious communication and having agreements set in place, and not just like unconsciously just getting in the bedroom and then not really talking about it. It's like this elephant in the room. Whereas now it's like, I can discern now if someone's a lover or if they're a partner, a potential partner, or if they're a client. This is a big thing. Whereas I used to, like, a lot of the time end up in the lovership with someone who probably should have been a client, or I'd end up in a relationship with someone who was not actually qualified for that role. So it's like now having just more discernment and like more, and I think that comes with having discernment comes from clearing a lot of our father wounds and like the childhood wounding, because I was actually reflecting on this morning, you know, how we ignore a lot of red flags from the start, you know. It's like we can see a red flag in someone, but yet we'll still keep going. We kind of like ignore it because of trauma and like just projecting, please just be like this father that I never had, or this man that I always wanted. But if we're not really holding a lot of that trauma and that conditioning, then we can see clearer, and we're like, oh wow, okay, there's a red flag. I'm going to actually listen to that. I'm not going to like go into delusion and pretend that they're going to be someone, maybe change into this person I want them to be, you know? So that's been a big thing. And it's taken like clearing out a lot of father wounding and masculine conditioning and things around that. And yeah, deepening into self-worth, self-love, you know, these things. It's such a big thing, you know. Like, I don't know if you've had that experience, but so many times I'm like, at the end of a relationship, I'm like, shit, that should have ended probably like 1 month in. Like, I saw the red flags, but I just ignored them because of all this conditioning and trauma and, you know.
Oh yeah, I've had that experience a number of times.
Yeah, because it's like the inner child show. Like it's like, please just be that person. It's like when the more mature, rational side comes in, it's like, wait a minute, this person is not a good person to be involved with. But we let that, like, you know, lust and desire take over, and it's like, it's really operating from the unconscious. And we have to do that, I think, to heal it. But there comes a time where it has to, like, yeah, we have to get out of that, like, inner child running the show.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work being a priestess of one's own temple.
Yeah, honestly. It's a human, like, being a human is a really complex thing, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're here for it. We chose to come here and be a part of this moment, and finding as much beauty in it as possible, I think is the purpose of it all. And I mean, it sounds like you're really in your purpose, and that's amazing. Can you talk some about the work that you do? Like the retreat, you just had a retreat in outside Puerto Viejo. So I know you do in-person events. I know you have online offering coming up really soon in March. Yeah. Can you tell us more about that work?
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm working with predominantly with women. So the retreat we just had it was called the Embodied Feminine Leadership Training. So I took 27 women through a week of going deeper into their own feminine embodiment. So we worked with and letting that be like the way they lead, because like really I see this new paradigm. It's all about embodiment. So we've got to embody what we're teaching. So it was focused on that, embodying. We worked with the archetypes and feminine archetypes, the tantric arts, the jade egg practice, the womb consciousness, womb healing, and then the sex priestess codes was a day module, and then we worked with like some of the things I teach in my online course Fempire, which is like more about like how to actually ground our creations into a business. So really like a lot of my work is kind of these 3-part journey. So it's like purification, like there's always a purification aspect. So clearing out the physical vessel, clearing out any blocked emotions, actually clearing the physical body. So a lot of, detoxification. And then from that place, activating our sexual energies. That's where I bring in, the tantric arts, practices, shadow work, inner child work, all these practices. And then circulation. So how to circulate that energy and really like ground it into what we're here to create. So that's like kind of what I work with in a lot of my journeys and courses and clients, that kind of theme. And so what's coming up is the sex priestess codes, which is, I really feel that's like the core of my work here, sex priestess, sexuality and then spirituality, merging the two. So I created a course, an online mentorship for women, and I ran it twice last year. I'm running it again. That's like a way to really just have an intro into these practices. But I mean, it's very deep. We go very deep. So we work with womb consciousness, healing your masculine side of you, animus alchemy, I call it. Then inner union, looking at that relationship, the 2 polarities within, coming into union internally first, and then how to self-source your erotic energy with the jade egg practice and self-pleasure practices, and then how to orgasmic manifestation is another thing we look at, running your sexual energy and learning how to like manifest with that and actually create with that, and channel it into your creativity. And then initiating men is the last topic that we explore in Sex Priestess. So that's really like, a lot of women say they want to like, basically invite their partner into Tantra or into more sacred sexuality. And so that's really comes from the woman exploring that and embodying that first. So that's what this course is really about. And then you bring that. So the last module is initiating men. So how to invite a man into that space as opposed to fall into his ways of relating. Maybe he's like very dominant in like how he wants to have sex, and it's like porn basically. Whereas like when you can really alchemize that and invite him into that subtle energy, it's really when that like sex priestess energy is online. So that's really where I'm at right now. And I have courses, self-paced courses as well. So there's like the Creatress, which is about consciously menstruating, so working with your menstrual cycle. And then there's pleasure principles, which is another course which is more about, it's like a self-pleasure course, clearing out any blockages and guiding you deeper into your own self-pleasure practices and different orgasms, and Jade Egg practice is also in that. And then Fempire is the other one. So that's my online course that's more focused on birthing or scaling your business using like that Shakti energy and integrating your feminine and masculine energy in your Dharma. So that's that's a bit about like what I've got going on. And then I want to write a book this year and I want to create this documentary. So it's all happening.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And I'm really excited about the work you do. I'm excited to embark on continuing to follow you and your offerings and sharing it with the world. Where's the best way to, I can say one of the best ways to find you is on Instagram. I think it's Tantric Alchemy.
Yeah, tantric.alchemy.
Yeah, tantric.alchemy. And are there other ways that you would love for people to find you?
Yeah, you can head to my website, which is www.tantricalchemy.net. And I just actually launched my new website, and you can, when you subscribe to my mailing list, you get a free orgasmic manifestation meditation. So that's cool. Just have an intro into my journey.
Awesome. Well, amazing. And if y'all enjoyed this conversation, I would be absolutely honored and thrilled if you would share it with your community, share it with somebody else that you think would enjoy it, leave a review about what you loved most, help us grow this community. And if you're on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you all so much for listening. And thank you, Nadine, so much for being a part of this conversation about how we are co-creating the new paradigm together. I love everything you've got to say about shamanism and priestesshood and mental health and conscious lovership and the new paradigm of relationships. So, thank you so much for being here.